All right, everyone. The Brexit situation has led to a reawakening of the colonial question over the Rock of Gibraltar, of course, held by the British for more than 300 years. Now the Spanish kind of sort of want it back. They want that to be exempt from the leaving the EU negotiations. And of course, the British are saying, fuck off, it's not going to happen. Spain and the UK are slightly antagonistic towards one another within this arrangement. The Spanish have said, previously they said, oh, we're going to veto, if the Scottish leave the UK, we'll veto any attempt by them to enter the EU. Now they're not so sure, and it's obvious they're trying to use that situation, I think, as a little bit of leverage over Gibraltar. Gibraltar is this very, very small chunk of strategically very important land that the British hold. It's sort of a touristy area as well, military zone in ways, and certainly has to do with Mediterranean movement being where it is. But it's actually right next to Spain, and the Spanish sort of want it. They sort of want to have rule over this largely British enclave population. And the UK has said, no, it's not. That's not on the negotiating table. We're not going to cede it. I don't blame them, and I wouldn't cede it either. This has been in British hands for 300 years. This isn't some recently acquired territorial acquisition with a predominantly like Spanish population or something like this. This is a British zone of strategic importance, a net benefit to the UK. It's been theirs, and it'll probably stay theirs. And the UK honestly does have the military force to keep anybody from doing anything about it. Same with the Falklands. It's like the Argentinian government wants it to be the Las Malvinas and wants it to be back in their hands. But there's a British population there. The UK already steamrolled them over that back in the Thatcher era. And now you have Theresa May, who's no Margaret Thatcher, admittedly, saying basically the same thing with regards to Gibraltar. But I think the difference might be, I don't think anyone expects the Spanish to suddenly take up arms and attempt to actually occupy the Rock of Gibraltar. The diplomatic fallout, the pure chaos that would be caused, would probably lead to a cessation of all attempts to negotiate, in the UK simply saying, we are no longer in the EU, we will not follow any dictates you hand down, there will no longer be negotiations, we're simply gone, you can screw off, anybody else who wants out can be with us, and that would rip apart the EU, I think, faster. But I don't think the Spanish ultimately, beyond alluding to, oh, we kind of want Gibraltar back, and using that as, on their end anyway, maybe diplomatic leverage, I don't think anything really will come to it. I don't think the Spanish really are going to risk. It would be almost surreal if the Spanish and the UK were to go to war over who controls Gibraltar. The people there would take up arms against the Spanish at that point. It just wouldn't work. Spain doesn't have the military capability to even do anything about the UK. The UK is maybe a shadow of the former British Empire, but it still does have projective force. I'm not sure that Spain would really have many allies in such a fight. If anything, it would hasten maybe the French and some of these others to leave the EU, to rise to the aid of the UK and just say, screw it, we're just simply not going to recognize the legitimacy of the European Union anymore. It'd set the stage for a total hellhole of a situation. But as far as diplomatically, the UK is saying they're not even going to consider it. Like, it's not even on the table. There's no possibility. Don't bother talking about it because you're not going to get it. And I'm not particularly surprised. You have to realize that the UK is still part of a quasi-monarchic commonwealth as well. It's not like Spain. Spain maintains, in essence, a sort of semi-centralized cultural control over Latin America, which wouldn't be able to help them, honestly, for the most part. But the UK is still part of a literal commonwealth with many of its former territories and former vassals. We're talking about Canada, Australia, and so forth. And combined, and they would probably stand together on this, you're looking at a military capability that's probably greater than that of the rest of the EU. And that's one major advantage, really, that the UK has. It's why the French, if they leave, they're probably going to end up siding with the UK. They're going to turn their back on the other European states and be part of sort of a true westernized system, as opposed to going down the dark path of what is essentially equates at this point to a post-Soviet sort of oligarchy. That's really what the EU is about. It's heavily interventionist. People there on the left that blame capitalism for their problems. There's no capitalism in the EU. It's all strangulated. It's every single thing that you do is determined in legality and scope by a bureaucracy. That's what the EU boils down to. And the UK is saying, screw yourselves. You're not going to touch Gibraltar. They do have the ability to defend it if necessary, but the chances they would actually come to blows, no matter how strategically important it is, that Spain would actually attempt to invade Gibraltar. Can you imagine a stranger timeline we'd be able to live in than if something like that actually occurred? But I don't see it on the horizon. The UK ultimately will take it with them, along with the Falklands and so forth. And they'll continue to be sort of a post-imperialistic, nonetheless Commonwealth system that still has a substantial amount of power, a substantial amount of manpower, military force, and a substantial economy. I think sometimes people forget about the existence of that Commonwealth. When they judge the UK, it's like they just got supplanted for 5th place in the World Economic Ranking by India, which is also former British territory. Nonetheless, of course, India needs 900 million people to slightly eclipse the economy of an island largely that has like 65 million. But beyond that, of course, the UK is wrapped up with all of these other states. Of course, the Australians, New Zealand, Canada, some of these other sort of territories and colonial acquisitions over time, including Gibraltar. So they're not going to give it up. Why would they? They don't have any onus on them to give it up because there's no actual claim that Spain could make in anyone's realm of imagination towards its ownership of something that they haven't held for 300 years, number one, that doesn't have really, it's got a British population, number two, and in which even if the people there, kind of like being in the EU, there'll still be some sort of negotiation over that. People will be able to travel to and from Gibraltar. Maybe it'll be sort of semi-separate from the UK's overall system. That is, people from the UK and Gibraltar can freely move because it's a UK territory. People from the EU maybe would also gain the ability to enter Gibraltar, not necessarily the UK, but there'd be some sort of exception made for that one territory. And that's sort of what would be likely to happen. It's probably as far as even the leftists in the UK would be willing to go. Even they're not going to say, oh, we're going to get rid of Gibraltar. Screw this moneymaker for us. Screw the people that are living there that they want to be there because it's warmer. It's not England. It doesn't rain every day. Winter doesn't last 4 months, and it's miserable. And they want to be in sort of this, central, west Mediterranean climate. They want to see the palm trees and stuff, sort of sit there and sip their alcohol instead of just drinking tea all day to stay warm or something. I wouldn't blame them. If I were like from England or Scotland or something, yeah, I'd probably want to be in Gibraltar too. Yeah, I'd probably want to be somewhere in a nicer climate. Hell, go to like Australia or some other Commonwealth state. Stay warm. Get some sun. Or maybe like northern New Zealand. They got like those little rainforest patches and the cycads and all that stuff. That'd be pretty cool. Actually, New Zealand would be on the short list of places I'd most want to visit, to tell the truth. Gibraltar would be on there too. Looks fairly nice. Kind of, it's tiny. Kind of semi-desertified, but at the same time, yeah, it looks pretty cool. Compared, again, to snowy, wet, ever cloudy London or something like that that's swiftly becoming, majority foreigner or something like that. So I'm not surprised. They're not going to give up Gibraltar. It's not going to turn into a fight. If it did, Spain would lose. They probably know that. Who's going to rise to their aid? There's going to be a bunch of Germans invading Gibraltar too. That'd be very, very funny. I think German troops now, they have to train. They can't even train with actual firearms. Like when they're in basic training, I think they use like colored broomsticks or something like that because of all the regulations that they've got. Yes, maybe the main military force of Europe, they no longer are, I suppose. That's about all. Peace out.